Did the Mahabharata really happen? Were the nuclear weapons of the Mahabharata? Was the Brahmastra a nuclear weapon? Is there scientific and archaeological evidence for the Mahabharata? These are just some of the questions I get asked all the time. And in this video series, Secrets of the Mahabharata, I will answer all these questions for you, because the Mahabharata has the answers to all these questions. After all, the Mahabharata says, Dharme charthe cha kame cha mokshe cha bharatarsham. Yadi hasti tadanyatra yanni hasti natat kvachit. And this is what it means. O best of the Bharat race, whatever is found in this about dharma, arth, kama and moksha may be found elsewhere, but whatever is not in it is not to be found anywhere else. This video series that you're watching, Secrets of the Mahabharata, is based on almost 20 years of my research on the Mahabharata. It's more than just a retelling or a translation of the original Sanskrit text. This video series is an exploration of the mysteries, the secrets of the Mahabharata. I will show you what the original Sanskrit shlokas really say and what they mean, and I will link them to other ancient texts like the Rig Veda and the Puranas. I will also examine historical, archaeological, and scientific evidence and explanations for what we come across. Let me assure you, everything we discuss will be based on facts and deep and extensive research. You will be amazed at all that I will be sharing with you in this series. Take, for example, Chitradurg Fort in Chitradurg district in Karnataka. According to legend, the Rakshas Hidim lived on Chitradurg Hill. In the Mahabharata, the story of how Bhima fought and killed Hidim is a part of the Adi Parv, which is the first book of the Mahabharata. But here are some interesting questions. Did Hidim truly live on Chitradurg Hill? And can we actually find clues within the text of the Mahabharata about where Hidim lived? We will explore this and other stories, local legends, and locations from the Mahabharata in the course of our journey through this video series. Here's another example. It's fairly well known that the Mahabharata has 80 parvs. Now, the Sanskrit word parv actually means joint or node in English. But in the context of the Mahabharata, it is loosely translated as book. So the Mahabharata has 18 books. Each parv or book is divided into chapters, and each chapter consists of a number of shlokas, which are couplets or verses of 2 lines each. But did you know that there is another classification of the Mahabharata? One in which the epic has almost 100 parvs, nearly 100 books. I will give you names of all of these parvs as we go through the series. Now let us come to the question, the first question that I had mentioned at the start of this episode. Did the Mahabharata really happen? To begin with, this question needs to be reframed, because when someone asks, did the Mahabharata really happen? The implication is that the Mahabharata was an event. But the Mahabharata was not a single event. So when people ask if the Mahabharata really happened, what they really mean is this. Is the story of the Pandavas and Kauravas a true story? And did the Kurukshetra war actually take place? Now that war does lie at the heart of the Mahabharata, and the story of the Kurus is the core of the Mahabharata. But there is so much more to the epic than just the story of the Kurukshetra war. But then that raises the question, what is the Mahabharata really all about? What else does it contain apart from the story of the Pandavas and the Kauravas and the great war of Kurukshetra? So the Mahabharata covers the entire history and lineage of the Kurus from the very beginning, before finally arriving at the Kurukshetra war. And then, of course, it describes what happened in the war and what happened after the war. What's interesting and really fascinating about the Mahabharata is the stories. There are stories within stories about different people and beings, all kinds of beings, and all kinds of events. And all these events occur over thousands of years. And a lot of people don't know this, but the Mahabharata also contains the story of the Ramayana. We will see this as we go along. So who narrated the Mahabharata and who composed the epic? Let's talk a little bit about this. The 2 principal narrators of the Mahabharata are Vaishampayana and Ugrashava. Vaishampayana was a disciple of Maharshi Vedavyasa, and Ugrashava was the son of Rishi Lomaharshan. Ugrashava was popularly known as Sati, and we will be seeing a lot of him as we go along. Now, Ugrashava heard the story of the Mahabharata as it was narrated by Vaishampayana at the snake sacrifice of Janamejaya. Janamejaya was the son of Parikshit, who was the grandson of Arjun the Pandav. So Janamejaya was the great-grandson of Arjun. Scholars agree that the Sanskrit text that has come down to us is the result of 3 iterations. And each of these iterations has built up on the previous one, enlarging the story and expanding the work. The earliest one, the origin story, is called Jaya and consists of 8,800 shlokas. This story was later revised and expanded to 24,000 shlokas and was then called the Bharat. The third and final expansion, called the Mahabharata, consists of 100,000 shlokas. It has been speculated that Vedavyasa composed Jaya and it was expanded to Bharat by Vaishampayana at Janamajaya's snake sacrifice. And the final version of the Mahabharata was possibly expanded by Ugrasha. But here's the thing. This conclusion by scholars is repeatedly and vehemently denied and contradicted by the Mahabharata itself. Because the Mahabharata insists that it has one composer, Sri Krishna Dvaipayana Vedavyasa. So what is the truth? Do we believe the scholars or do we believe the Mahabharata? The answer, unfortunately, is not that simple. To uncover the truth, we must dive into the text of the Mahabharata. And that is what we will do in this series, which is based on facts. And as we go through the Mahabharata, I will give you all the facts, and you can decide for yourself where the truth lies. Now, when we talk about the question of whether the events of the Mahabharata really happened or not, what we are really asking is, are the stories and events of the Mahabharata a historical record of actual events? I will give you a more detailed and nuanced answer in the course of this video series based on what is revealed by the Sanskrit shlokas. And I will substantiate this with logical arguments and evidence wherever I can. But for now, let me tell you very quickly what I think based on my research. To begin with, the Mahabharata is believed to be Itihasa. In fact, as you will see, the Mahabharata itself claims several times to be Itihasa. Now, Itihasa is a Sanskrit word. It does not mean history. Itihasa means this is what happened, which means that the Mahabharata claims that it is not a myth or a fictional account of events. The Mahabharata categorically says it is a factual account of what actually happened in the past. I have mentioned in my TEDx talks and other talks that I strongly believe that the stories of the Mahabharata have a core which is based on events that probably did happen in some shape or form in the distant past. And of course, that core has been embellished by storytellers and bards over the centuries to make the Mahabharata more interesting to narrate verbally. You must remember that the Mahabharata was not written down for thousands of years. It was orally narrated. It was first written down sometime between 300 and 500 BC, so it had to be interesting to hear and dramatic to narrate. But the core events at the heart of these stories may have roots in reality. I believe that many of the stories of the Mahabharata are a memory of events that did happen. And in that respect, the Mahabharata truly is Itihasa, a record of what actually happened, which has come down to us in the form of stories rather than as a dry historical record. In my research for the past 20 years, I have not relied on any one source on the original text of the Mahabharata. I have used several texts in different languages, Sanskrit, English, and Hindi. I have compared and cross-checked the different Sanskrit texts as well as the translations. In fact, if you are interested in the detailed research I have done, do check out the series Revealed Mysteries of the Mahabharata, also The Quest of Gold. In that series, along with the detailed translation of the Sanskrit shlokas, I also compared the different Sanskrit texts and the various translations, and I highlight the discrepancies and differences in interpretation. The texts I have used in my research are also the sources for this series. Now, I've studied 3 different Sanskrit texts. The text published by the Chitrashala Press in Pune, the text of the critical edition produced by the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, Hobori, in Pune, and the Sanskrit text with the Hindi translation published by the Gita Press, Gorakhpur. I have also studied 3 English translations, the unabridged translations of K.N. Ganguly and M.N. Dutt, and the translation of the critical edition by Vivek Beproy. One last point before we dive into the original text of the Mahabharata. Who exactly was Maharshi Vedavyasa? Let's find out a bit more about him, shall we? His father was Maharshi Parashar and his mother was Satyavati. Now, not everyone may be familiar with the story of sage Parashar. So let me give you a little background. Maharshi Parashar was the grandson of Vasishtha, the great Maharshi famous for his rivalry with King Vishwamitra. I think most of us have heard the story of Vishwamitra and Vasishtha, and we will come across the story later in the Adi Parv. And at that point in time, I'll tell you more about these two Maharshis. But for now, let's carry on with Maharshi Parashar and his family tree. Vasishtha, as we know, was a mind-born son of Brahma, and the eldest of the 100 sons of Vasishtha was Shakti, whose mother was Arundhati. We will hear more about Shakti in the Adi Parv when we hear the story of how Arjun defeats the Gandharv named Angarapar, after which the Gandharv narrates the story of the hostility between Vishwamitra and Vasishtha. For now, it is enough for our purpose to know that Maharshi Parashar was the son of Shakti and Adrishanti. And the story of Shakti and Adrishanti is also narrated in the Adi Parv. So what do we know about Maharshi Parashar? We know for one that he was the narrator of the Vishnu Puran to sage Maitreya. He was also one of the many great sages who paid their respects to Bhishma as he lay on his bed of arrows. We will also see in the Shanti Parv that he once had a discussion with King Janaka on spirituality. This story is narrated by Bhishma to Yudhishthira. Finally, we know that 9 hymns in the Rig Veda are attributed to him. Hymns 65 to 73 in Mandan 1, which are all hymns to Agni, are said to have been composed by Maharshi Parashar. We will hear about the birth of Parashar later in the Adi Parv, and I will tell you more about him then. Now, there's a lake in Himachal Pradesh called Parashar Lake, where the Maharshi is said to have done tapasya or meditation. There is also a cave in Panhala in Kolhapur district called the Parashar Cave. Now, coming to Vyasa's mother Satyavati. Does the name sound familiar to you? If you think you've heard her name in some other context, then you're correct. She is the same Satyavati who was married to King Shantanu and who became the mother of Chitrangad and Vichitravirya, both of whom died at an early age. And as we know, Vichitravirya's widows gave birth to Pandu and Dhritarashtra respectively through Vyasa. We'll hear the story in greater detail in the Adi Parv. Now, here's an interesting thing which many people may not have realized. In at least one respect, Maharshi Parashar was responsible for setting in motion the entire chain of events that eventually led to the Kurukshetra war. Why do I say this? I will explain the statement when we come to the story of Satyavati in the Adi Parv. Coming back to Rishi Vyasa, he was named Veda Vyasa because he classified the Vedas. Veda Vyasa is a title rather than a name. His real name, Sri Krishna Dvaipayana, comes from the fact that he was born on an island or dweep, hence Dvaipayana, and he had a dark complexion, hence Krishna. He also composed the 18 Mahabharats, in addition to classifying the Vedas and composing the Mahabharata. There is an ancient cave in the Chamoli district of Uttarakhand, just a few kilometers away from the shrine of Badrinath. It is believed that Maharshi Vyasa composed the Mahabharata in this cave with the help of Lord Ganesha. And we will hear the story in the Adi Parv. With that introduction, let us wade into the waters that stretch before us, going deeper and deeper. Let us immerse ourselves in the immensity of this great epic. Let us dive deep into the Mahabharata and explore it like it has never been explored before. Come with me and let us together discover the secrets of the Mahabharata.